the motherfucker. Thank you very much, everybody, coming back tonight to the pigsty. Tonight we are joined by Kendon. Kendon is someone I've had the wonderful pleasure of having interactions with over on Cider and Port's YouTube channel. If anybody knows Stephen, Cider and Port Rib, that the guy from Real Ireland, I think that's what he's going by now, you know. He might pop on later. He's laughing his tits off. He's here. Anyway, so we've no real, as usual here, we're just going to wing it. It's more about Kendon than any particular topic, just to introduce another member to the community, someone else who may disagree with us on a few topics, may agree with us on others. So, yeah, it's good to get a different opinion. So, Kendon, you don't have a YouTube channel, but you are famous on TikTok, yes?
Yes, I am TikTok famous, which is, as Stephen Ryan will tell you, the worst kind of famous. I'll tell you, I started TikTok by accident about 7 months ago now during lockdown, because all the bright young Twinkie things at work were using it, but they were like following fashion creators and dancers and things like that. And I saw there was a political side of things, and I thought, well, I'm politically conscious and interested in debate, you know, civilized conversation rather than shouting matches. Yep. I can stitch videos and duet videos and add my two penneth into the mix, and maybe people seem to like it. Maybe people will respond. Now, I expected like maybe get 1,000 followers, 2,000 followers. I'm currently on like 652,000, and I do not know why. All I've done is I've played the algorithm as all creators should.
Yes.
I pump out my content and people respond positively or negatively, but they engage in a conversation. So I'm winging this. I have no idea what I'm doing.
How does the conversation work, if you don't mind me asking? Is it like YouTube where you just comment under thread? You know, there's a comment thread, a comment section, and people leave comments and you can bounce back and forth. Is there limited characters? Can you dump a fucking essay, or is it very much like Twitter? Is it limited characters, so to speak?
It is limited, yes. I can respond with text or with a video, because one of the things you can do is a video response where the comment exists somewhere on the page and you can move it around, or then I can give a long form answer. I've done that a few times. In fact, I plan to do it more often because it's a great way of engaging with the audience.
Yeah.
One of the things I love as well is that if you seek to find common ground, you end up drawing a wider audience. So in the comment threads, you'll find leftists, liberals, centrists, conservatives, a few white nationalists, but we don't talk about them because they're wankers.
Yes.
But they're the lowest form of life as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, you do get a smorgasbord of people. And the thing is as well is that because
obviously they're not all agreeing. Some are with, some are against.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
They argue with each other, but they do so in a manner that is civil, which I find refreshing, because the internet is just full of bile and vitriol and hatred and childish spite. It's not a pleasant place.
Now, I always known you. You would have been, as most of the audience would be here. We all have come together under the atheist sort of umbrella, the atheist community. Whatever the fuck doesn't exist, does exist. All that bullshit. Your main focus would be politics, though. Your background, if anyone can't tell from his accent, you're from England. And over here, we're not as crazy as the Americans. So the Christianity and the religion, that's not more so your drive. You're more aiming down the political route.
Well, I suppose, yes. The thing is, though, is that inevitably, if you're going to talk about politics, you must talk about religion. You must talk about the presence of religion in society. Yes. Is our politics born of religion? I mean, I would argue that all cultures are religious to a certain extent. It just depends on what you mean by a god, what you worship. So, I mean, democracy is no more real than a deity, but people still believe in it, and people will die for it. So,
but what made you want to? You didn't go, I hate God, I'm going to start a TikTok channel. It was, I have a political opinion, and I'm going to put that political opinion out there. And then after a while, as you say, the conversation extends. Then the religion then comes into it. But it's the politics that I wouldn't use the word drives you, but you get what I mean. Yeah, hopefully the audience does as well.
Well, I mean, to steal a comment from Vosh, I think politics is dumb but important. And the trouble is that I got the sense as well that on apps like TikTok, it's a child's app, really. I mean, they say it's a family app, but it's for Zoomers. And the Zoomers have been marinated in a particular political philosophy, which is not necessarily terrible, but it's flawed and closed. And they treat it like a holistic system, and it isn't. So they need diversity of opinion. There's also this idea, the word conservative, the adjective conservative, has become a slur, and it's applied to literally anything. And you think, well, no, it's not actually that. What you're describing isn't actually conservative, but you use the word conservative as a slur, and all your mates approve. And so there's no real thought. I find thought more interesting in the modern world because it's not propagated as well as some of the other philosophies.
So touching on that and having your opinion on that, you're conservative then, yeah?
I mean, mildly. I mean, I always say to people, scratch a mild conservative, you'll find a disappointed liberal. In recent years, I've drifted from the centre left to the centre right without changing most of my principles.
I think we actually had this conversation on Stevens where we were talking about that, and it basically boils down to it's just a fucking label and you put it whatever you want and all that, but well, the
goalposts are always shifting, aren't they?
We love shifting our goalposts.
But,
I mean, I was going to make a joke and say you're the enemy, but we've only had 2 conversations so far, so I'll not jump that far. But again, you would consider yourself not conservative, not necessarily right wing, but more leaning that direction. You wouldn't use the description liberal or progressive or anything like that from the political point of view that's mainstream being used now.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if you progressive, not really. No, my instinct is to conserve, to use the proper verb, to conserve those institutions that have helped us along, and I see the value now in a lot of the old ways. Not everything, but a lot of the old ways
is a bad phrase. Old ways, but yeah, I get what. Well, I don't know. Someone says to me if someone says talking to me in the idea of, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just going with a broad brush stereotype. This is what happens when you say these things, and you say sort of conservative, right wing, these words and this, that, and the other, and you say it better than back in the olden days. I'm thinking nuclear family, woman at home, and that as itself has a bad connotation.
Well, it's not. No, I mean, the trouble is that the great thing about conservatism, right, is it's probably the laziest political philosophy because it requires the least amount of effort. It's like, this works, I like this, let's just keep it. And that's it. That's it. It's all you have to do. So, I mean, a lot of things, I don't believe that you don't have to pass legislation to enforce things, because if you have to enforce it, it's not natural, therefore you're imposing, which it's ultimately going to end in failure. So for example, here's an example of a blended position, right? I believe that parents should be married before they have children. I believe this because I used to be a teacher, for those who didn't know, and all the kids I saw who were troubled or heartbroken or suffering from mental illness or poor academic attainment came from broken or single parent families.
Can we use the phrase single parent families? Coming from a single parent family myself, my mother strived her hardest.
Absolutely.
I'm not trying to. I'm just giving this one anecdotal thing. I understand exactly where you're coming from. But growing up in that, my mum was like, I do not want to be seen as a broken home. No, it was never one of them things. So it just has bad connotations with it. So if we could prefer to use single parent family.
Yeah, no, I can live with that. Yeah. I also don't like the phrase single mother family. Single mothers. It's a single parent, because sometimes it's the father who's raising the child. And
don't get me wrong. Most dads are assholes. I love my daughter, and they're sick of fucking listening to me talk about it, and I never shut the fuck up. All my best Twitter feeds are about her. So a lot of fathers are assholes. So if things happen when they're not married, there is a very good chance in today's society that they'll fuck off. He'll give the money he gives, and that's more a product of society, I think, the way men, you have that option to just run away, you know. And it's not, well, it's a choice. It's not an option. It's a fucking choice they make. But
yeah, and I think they should be hunted down and shot. But that's just the part.
Yeah, I don't know how they can.
This fox hunting, more twat hunting, I think. No, but the point I was making is that I think that parents ought to be married before they have children for stability and security's sake. It's not a universal truth that all single parents fail or that all two-parent families are successful. But let's face it, the odds are very much in the favour of a two-parent structure. However, that's a conservative position. But I don't care if the married parents are gay. That doesn't bother me. So, which is a liberal position.
Yes.
So when it comes to marriage and children, am I conservative or liberal? The answer is yes.
You see, everything is grey. Everything is grey. There's no fucking black and white. That's why I hate labels, you know. But
yeah,
the opinion that you're having on that. Sorry, excuse me. I'm totally just rolling a nice tobacco cigarette here because I'm in it. And you know, that is a progressive view, right? But that's your opinion on it. It's where you've came to, and you couldn't put that in a box.
But you see, I would argue that it's actually a conservative point of view, because if you recognise that, you know, gay people don't just have sex, but it's not just a form of sex, but it's a form of love. If you recognise that they can form lifelong bonds, just like heterosexual couples do, it also behooves the state to recognise these couplings so that they can afford certain legal protections or financial protections. So I'm not, you know, there is a way. A lot of activists use the gay. I mean, obviously, gay people didn't, but a lot of activists used gay marriage as a kind of sledgehammer to destroy traditional marriage, to use that phrase. I would argue that a conservative, to conserve the institution of marriage, all they've got to do is sort of expand the definition in one direction and sort of absorb these new couples, because the urge to be married is a conservative impulse. It always has been. You know, it's like, I don't want to go around sticking my dick in things. I want to pick one person and settle for them. That's a conservative impulse. Now, the fact that the two people involved are homosexual doesn't necessarily mean that you're some
I think it's a societal influence that's made people think that way. It may have ended up as a conservative view, but it was society that pushed people down that sort of route. Like, you know, it's not like it's the way you spoke it to me, it seems like it's a natural response. I don't think, like, men are not, again, with the whole fathers and running away and shit like that, the evidence is there that naturally people aren't monogamous. Yes.
Yes, but I think
the way you put the phrase across was that it was natural and sort of it's a conservative thing, and that's sort of, but I would disagree. Maybe not with your wording, but the way you put it across.
No, okay. Well, no, the marriage is itself is a conservative impulse because you are restricting yourself to one partner. That's the idea anyway, at least in most cultures. I agree that human beings are not monogamous because obviously we experience sexual attraction to people we're not married to, which is evidence that we're not monogamous. However, the marriage, I would argue, certainly the married couple, is a fundamental building block of society. And so as a social institution, as a social construct, you build the culture out of married couples and things like that.
See, with marriage also as well, going back to, you know, why it was there and what the point of it and stuff, and, you know, you have a family. The fact that you have a family means that you have grandparents and things like that, and you have generational people living in your house, able there to look after the kids, able there to help out. You know, if you're running around and just sleeping with everybody and just, you know, stuck at your mother's house, they want rid of you. They want you to go and marry. And it wouldn't have been like you had the ability to go and get a flat with your mate, go and split a house with your mate. Still, people don't do that very often here over in England or over in the UK, whatever. You know, I may be wrong. I'm not looking in statistics or anything. It's just not something I hear of an awful lot. You know, when people move in together, it's usually a man and woman moving in together. Yeah. You know, you live on your own and then you move in together. You didn't have the ability to live on your own back in them days. You know, it wasn't, you couldn't just go out and build a shed. So it sort of was pushed down that route. And I can understand, don't get me wrong. Again, granny, grandparents, all of that, having that around definitely does help the kids. You know, having lots of family around and more people there does help the kids.
Yeah. But certainly, and that's, as I get older, I think I'm just becoming more cowardly and less of a revolutionary, if I ever was one. You know, security, stability, steady income, meal on the table at the end of the day, that kind of thing you get the basics right, because you know this, you're a father, you know this. The child needs that kind of stability and structure, and then they can blossom. But when I was teaching, a lot of the kids who were not necessarily daft or anything like that or lazy, but they were distracted because they had thoughts of, like, when I go home tonight, is there going to be food? Is my mother going to be in? Is my father going to be in? Some of them wouldn't even know who their fathers are. Is the bailiff going to knock on the door this weekend? Is one of my parents?
All of them things, would they not be society though?
Yeah,
they could all be solved through society though. That wouldn't, and they could still have a single parent. The things that not with the mother and father, obviously, but worrying if there's food and this, that, and the other. But bailiff at the door, because we haven't used credit cards and things like that. These are all products of society.
I agreed, but I would suggest,
just because there's two wages coming in or having two people there with benefits now, as we have with the social system over here. As you have kids, you've got the mother bringing that in, you've got the father getting benefits. He is now out working a wage, so you don't have to worry about your credit card bills because there's two people coming in. But this is a societal thing. If we introduce, say for talk's sake, a basic universal income, would you consider swaying, as you say, later in life you want stability and financial and make sure everything's grand? If we could provide that without having to have a marriage and having, say for talk's sake, a universal basic income and a better social network for families so they didn't have to worry about these things, would you consider swinging your views?
No, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, because you, as someone who identifies, I don't know what ism you subscribe to necessarily.
I'm a MathPig.
You're the MathPig, right? Okay. Yeah. MathPig has his own philosophy. I can live with that. That's fine. You're definitely left of centre. So
yes,
I'm guessing what you're describing is a centralised social system. You're a kind of centralised government body that organises, say...
I'm just saying, if we give all the money, everything else aside, and we could then support these families, if we got rid of the problems that you are pointing out that makes you conservative, if these problems were gone, regardless of what it is, doesn't matter if a magic fairy came in and went boop and they were gone, they're now gone, would you then consider swaying your views? No,
because I don't think that the problem with the collapse of the family since the 1960s has had a catastrophic impact on several cultures that I've studied in the Western world, certainly. I would argue that the reason why we've got problems with, because the thing about marriage, right, is it gives mothers the stability to bring a child into the world, knowing that there's an income to help support them, so they're not living on the street.
I'm a proponent of it as well, and I would like to get married someday, so I don't want that to come across that I disagree with you. So, but
it forces boys to grow up. It forces men to grow up and take on responsibility. I don't think we need sweeping social reform. I mean, you can't turn back the clock, can you? I mean, I'm one of those people who believes that no-fault divorce was devastating. It completely ruined the institute. There's no real point to getting married now. Unless you're religious, there's no real point to it. You get no tax breaks. There's no kudos. The stigma.
There isn't a relationship that's been proven to show that they're living together more than 5 years. They get the same benefits as married or something like that, isn't it? As you say, there's no extra incentive financially.
No, exactly. And the trouble is, it's too easy to break. Marriage is also one of those weird institutions where it's the only business contract in the world that you can be rewarded for breaking early. It's a very strange thing.
Prenuptial agreements and all that, and you bring in, you end up with half and things like that. But Eddie Murphy Ross said it best.
Say the answer.
Eddie Murphy Ross said it best in the 80s.
Yeah. He just says, I'm just going to take half your shit. Yeah. There are feminists on, or I don't know if they're feminists. I shouldn't say that. They're young ladies on TikTok, right, who post videos saying like general questions, and they seem sincere. And they'll ask, why do you guys think that men don't want to get married anymore? And I stitched one of these and just said, honestly, they're terrified. Because we all know stories. I mean, I know stories.
I wouldn't say that's. Maybe you're terrified of getting married, but I wouldn't use it as a word steeping. Marriage as well. If you said to someone, "Marriage, are you terrified of it?" It would be the same sort of instant of God. I don't believe in the need for it anymore. So why am I afraid of it, so to speak? The idea of a family breaking down, and if we can't get married and stuff. People used to get married very young because they wanted to move out when they were 18 and 19. Only way you can do that is move out and start a family. A lot more contraceptions around now than they were back then. So now you've got a family, you're quite young, you're still figuring yourself out. I would say, just by saying this without checking statistics, but I would lean, if I would be correct, that people who would get married later on in life generally stay together longer.
Well, I mean, it's certainly true that, you know, when you're between the ages of about 18 and 25, you're a child with an adult's impulses. You don't mentally mature until about 25 to 30. That's when you really, your brain solidifies. So, yeah, I'm not necessarily advocating marrying young, like, you know, leave school at 16, get married at, you know, get to school at 18.
I'm just saying this is why it was happening. This is why it was happening. This is the past. This is why it's being pushed down.
But what I would argue is that one of the biggest problems we've got in certainly in England, and I guess it's true in Ireland as well. And I don't come through this entirely objectively, because members of my family have done this. One of the biggest problems we've got is we've got children raised in relative poverty. Because there's no social drive to be married before you have children. So the financial stability that used to come with marriage is not even considered anymore. Parents, because of the social systems we've got in place, it's possible for parents to have children that they can't afford because someone else is paying the bill.
Yes. I definitely didn't. I was happy I had Elena when I had Elena. Do not get me wrong. I was in a relationship for a long time before that and had wanted kids for 10 years at least. You know, I was in that mood for being in a relationship for 14 years. You end up, you know, wanting to move down the line and have kids and stuff like. But I am glad I had her when I did. Kids cost money. That bitch won't stop growing. The last outfit I bought was 8. She's 4. I mean, stop growing, woman. It's you know, kids are expensive. Slow it
down. You know, give me a chance.
Yeah, kids are expensive.
I can only earn so much money a month.
Yeah, but that, no. I totally 100% agree with you there, man. And obviously, 2 wages coming in, everything's better. 2 parents, regardless of what sex or gender they are, obviously is better. You know, it's a stable environment. Not in any disagreement with you there. And I think we've tangented off, and this is the 3rd time we've done this in every conversation where we agree on about 90%, and we go down this wee route here, like. But right, that's your one progressive view with your one conservative. Or is it your mixed opinion? Have you another mixed opinion?
Oh, that's a really good one. Do I have another mixed opinion?
Well, you obviously had that one in your back pocket as something that you usually.
I do. That was one's come up recently. Okay, how about this? I believe in free market capitalism. I believe that, you know, the government should get out of commerce as much as is reasonably possible, because I think that the private sector is great at generating wealth, new products, new ideas, and that sort of thing. However, I am not as lunatic as some, say, American conservatives who think that all regulation is like communazi fascism.
So you would be for capitalism and against out of control capitalism, if we're just going to use fucking terms.
Well, I mean, this is it. I mean, I'm for free markets, because I think that, you know, companies should be because I believe that companies should be free to interact and produce products and sell it to the market. But I don't believe that companies should be free from all interference.
Would you be of the opinion that capitalism, and because of capitalism, that family and marriage has died out?
Has seen the new market, which is young singles and people who shag around and things like that, and has come up with
now they have. Now, you know, that's what I'm saying. Yes, they have moved on, and it's the capitalism that has destroyed your view of the family.
I'm not sure I quite understand, if I'm being honest.
Dave, it's a statement from the chat. MathPig, it's capitalism that's destroyed his view of the family.
I'm not sure. I don't think so at all. I think what's happened is that a lot of progressives passed a lot of reforms in the 60s, maybe earlier, maybe a bit later, because they wanted to deal with problems. I don't think these reforms were considered all the way through. So there have been knock-on effects, negative consequences that weren't necessarily wanted, but weren't anticipated. I think capitalism has moved in and has created things like, I don't know, Bumble, Tinder, you know, all the dating apps, for example, are exploiting the fact that people want to shag around now. They want to settle down later, so they want to have fun. So capitalism moves in. Capitalism isn't like this sort of like guiding. I know people see it as this. It's just a mechanism.
It was good that you caught yourself, because it was, people do see it like that. It is that way. Like, capitalism runs the markets, it runs the economy. It's but as you said, it drives people to make money, to do better, to get better things. It also, in my opinion as well, drives research and moving forward. If I can come out with a better car, if I can come out with a better electric motor, if I can come out with a better solar panel cheaper, I can make more money. So there's an incentive for technology to get better and to move forward, where I could see technology becoming stagnant if everybody was just happy and got the status quo. I agree with you on that. Respond, and then I'll respond with Dave's.
Say again, sorry?
I says respond to what I said, and I'll have a look at what Dave said.
Fair enough. So absolutely. So, I mean, capitalism is a great engine for generating innovation and great wealth. However, the sort of people who are attracted to competitive market games are narcissists, egomaniacs, and psychopaths. And those people need to be regulated. You need to keep an eye on them, because they could, as has been seen time and time and time again, cultures have been utterly ravaged by greedy bastards in pinstripe suits. I mean, I work with a lot of these people, and some of them are just perma-grinning psychos who are just not to be trusted. So when people say, like, the neoliberal policies of a lot of American governments, I don't understand it. Like, I have arguments with Republicans about minimum wage, I don't necessarily think it should be, I've had a chat with Stephen Ryan about this. I don't think it should be arbitrarily increased to $15 an hour necessarily, but I've talked to Republicans who think that minimum wage shouldn't exist. And you think, no, that's mad. Or they say, I don't like trade unions because that's communism. I'm like, what? I mean, it could become, a highly politicized anti-capitalist force, but for worker representation, a trade union is a pragmatic measure more than anything else. I think, we shouldn't have to worry about, mandatory sick leave every year. Like we get 24 days off in England. I think it's 24 paid leave every year.
Oh no, we can't have that, man. Sick money is nothing. It is fuck all. I know that we do get it, but it's not anything you could live on. Like.
Maybe not, but we have it, and in the same way that we have mandatory paid holidays, for example.
Don't get me wrong. Just to add on to that, I'm sitting here whinging about the sick pay. If your sick goes on that long enough that you then will probably end up stop working, you can get benefits then from the government depending on your sickness. You will get money subsidized to you that way. So you just move to a different route, so. But I think that's more, again, capitalism. It's don't give them enough money to live on so that they'll not take as long as sick. They'll get back as quick as possible.
There is that. I mean, there is the argument, George Carlin, the American comedian that died in 2008, and I miss him every bloody day, once said that we're paid enough to keep you alive. What's the word? You're paid just little enough that you need to come back to work, but you're paid just enough that you won't quit, or something like that. And it's basically, it's a forced form of desperation, right? You need to come to work to earn money to pay the bills. Mm-hmm. But the American attitude, which is where a lot of British conservatives and American conservatives fall out, is just because someone is poor. And you'll always have poor people. There's never going to be a society where poor people don't exist. So I'm not, that's always going to exist. I don't think that just because someone is poor that they should suffer. And the American attitude, and I could explain where I think this comes from, but the American attitude is very much the idea is like, if you are working minimum wage jobs, if you're flipping burgers in McDonald's, it's because you're lazy, it's because you're worthless. You should have, you're 35, you're still working at McDonald's, you must be some kind of dickhead, and all the rest of it. And it's like, no, that's not the point. It might be the only job they can get. It might be that there are because they're mentally not capable of doing anything more demanding. It might be because their area is economically deprived. It might be because they like it.
There's a million reasons that we don't need to limit off. We get the idea. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. But they talk to Americans and say, like entry-level jobs are there so you can get something better. And I try to explain to them that minimum wage isn't about what you think they should have. Minimum wage is about the bare minimum you need to exist to pay the bills and fill the fridge. And Americans,
which has destroyed the family. That they can't do that now. You know, a single parent family can't because of capitalism. That's what I think Dave's point is. It is impossible now for one wage to support a family. I seen clickbait the other day that on minimum wage now in America, with what it is, nobody can afford basic rent. It was probably clickbait. I didn't follow through because of that, but that was the title, you know. So that's at least 80%, 70% or whatever the fuck it is of most of the people, so they can say that as clickbait. But it was clickbait. But minimum wage in America is very low. So there is a necessity for it.
Yeah. The one thing I would say is that I agree that it's almost impossible for a single parent, a single income to support a family. But there are 2 points that I would make to that.
Oh.
One, if you can't afford to support a family, you shouldn't have one. That's always been a position of mine. I mean, one of the reasons...
if the choices are taken away and she's a rape victim.
Yeah, that's a difficult one. But then that's where benefits come in. You know, you need some kind of support.
Yeah, you go and you get married and your boyfriend gets hit by a car.
Again, that's where you step in and you have. But then those are I want to say act of God, but that sounds a bit cynical, doesn't it? But these are these are unforeseen circumstances.
Should we not cover for all circumstances?
Yeah, it's not fair to condemn people for circumstances beyond their control. So if there is a big life event, like, I don't know, you contract cancer, you die of cancer, who looks after your daughter? That should never be.
See, that's again down to planning ahead. I am a single man that had to go through lots of fucking hoops to make sure that I was insured by life. I have 2 life policies to make sure that I am fully covered. That all goes and is tied in with the house. So if anything happens to me, the house is sold and the money goes to the daughter. So she will be at least financially stable with, all going well, 6 figures, like, and that'll be there for her if anything passes away, like.
No, okay, fair enough. But the basic question remains. You know, there are things that one must do to prepare. But obviously, particularly in America, they can't afford to pay a lot of insurance because they don't earn enough.
No, it's not cheap. It's not fucking cheap life insurance, but it's a necessity.
But the other problem is, so the first one is, I said that, if you can't have children, you shouldn't have them. But obviously that's a blanket statement. We found exceptions already. The second point is that because of population explosion and things like that, workers are now less competitive. So they can't argue, they can't negotiate higher wages, because if you don't want to do the work for this price, we'll find some other bugger who will.
I mentioned this before. I can't remember who it was. It may have been on Stephen's channel, where the guy I work with, who's there longer than me, actually gets paid less than me because he is not as good a negotiator as I am whenever I started the job, like, you know. Yeah.
But that sounds like skilled. That's a skilled role. If you're an unskilled labourer, good luck. Yeah. You know, you've got absolutely no leverage whatsoever. I mean, unions be damned. I mean, I like unions. We can have them as well. But if you don't have it's a buyer's market. If I've got 5 positions and I've got 20 applicants, I get to pick. And if all the 20 applicants are basically the same, how do you differentiate between them? That's why, developing skill sets obviously makes you more employable, and it also means you can haggle a bigger salary, because at least you've got a bargaining chip. Like, look, I'll take my skill set to your rival.
But even add that the two of us basically work. Well, I do a wee bit more than him, but not I use 1, maybe 2 pieces of equipment more than him that he couldn't fucking use if he tried. Don't get me wrong, but we both come in and got moved into that factory, that building, that section when we started, and depending then on our ability to do things, we got moved on to better and more harder equipment to use and more complicated equipment to use and stuff like that. Like, he literally saws things up and down, and I work in 3 dimensions, so it's slightly different. But when we started there, we went in at the same level, if you understand what I mean. So regardless of skilled worker or unskilled worker, me and him went in at the same level. And just as negotiating skills and capitalism, again, the boss wanting to pay as absolutely little as possible to see what that guy's happy with.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And this is always what capitalists want to do. They want to reduce costs.
So capitalism does drive society, as you disagreed with earlier. It does drive your decisions. It does drive things. I'm paraphrasing, but...
Yes, but I don't. Yeah, and absolutely. But the thing is that doesn't mean that capitalism is necessarily, fatally flawed and needs to be binned. And that's the way I think a lot.
No. Yeah, I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that statement. Capitalism should not be binned. Everything's a grey area. It's a mix of everything.
Yeah, so capitalism does, I suppose, it does drive society in the Western world to a certain degree. I think that's a useful thing, but then obviously there's more to life than money, MathPig. That's
Oh
the
man,
thing. There's more to
definitely.
life than money,
We
and
yeah,
like,
we had this discussion the other day.
yeah,
Definitely
exactly.
so
And it's
much
like,
more
and
money.
yeah, exactly. And like, there are some things that are beyond price. There are things that, I defend the basic idea of the NHS. And all these conservatives go, how can you defend this socialist institution? It's like, well, yeah, technically it is socialist, but one, obviously, we've seen what you've got in the States, and it's shit. So the second thing is that some things you don't need to make a buck off everything. You don't need to make, and I'm not talking about advanced medical stuff, even just basic healthcare. Why can't we just all pitch in a little bit and get something basic covered? I mean, Stephen and I had a conversation with a trans woman called Diane, living in Pennsylvania, who might well be dead by now. There's a
Diana,
good chance.
the
Diana,
lavender
yes.
lady.
Say again.
The lavender lady.
I don't know. Yes, Lavender Lady. Yes.
Yeah. No, Diana's a good
Yeah.
friend. Yeah, no. Yeah. Whenever I found out, I broke down in stream and cried on stream with her, man. I love Diana.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, no. Steve and I had an intense conversation for like an hour trying to work out how American healthcare works, and it's like we realize it doesn't, like, on any level. It's just rubbish. It's like, but the thing is, it's neither a socialist or a privatized system. It's a racket. It's just a way of screwing poor people out of money. I had a point and it's gone. Yes,
Bad medical system in America.
But that's what happens when capitalism is completely unregulated, where no one is watching anybody. That's always the danger. So we need to form a happy marriage between the capitalist engine and socialist concern, and then you have a little chin wag and you hash out something, and hopefully it works.
Everybody gets free IKEA furniture. Everybody
Yeah.
gets free IKEA furniture and a nice house and food on the table. And if you want anything better than IKEA, you have to fucking get a job and buy it yourself. But everybody deserves the basic fucking minimum. Like.
The bare minimum, it depends on the conversation, doesn't it?
But broad brush and all that there. We don't want them to fucking starve. Like, everybody should be comfortable in their life and not have to worry about the next meal being put in front of them.
Yeah, that's the dream, I suppose. I think we come at it. The thing that the problem that I have with conversation, not with you, you've been obviously very genial and very welcoming, and that's appreciated. But the problem I have with a lot of people, particularly on the internet, when we talk about the issues, whatever the issue is, it doesn't really matter, is that there's a lot of sort of like instinctive antagonism to anyone who doesn't think like you.
Oh, I'm in Egypt. 1 second.
Oh.
Sorry, going ahead. Dave, I'm blaming Dave for that. I hit copy and then it opened a fucking window. So Dave's got a question whenever you're finished.
Yeah, sure. No, it's like they assume that if you don't abide by this is something on the left and on the right, the far left, the extremists. They assume that if you don't agree with their philosophy, that you're the enemy and must be destroyed. And it's like, no, we agree. We might agree on the problem. It's the solution that I have trouble with, and the solution that we need to hash out. That's why the motto of my TikTok channel is less hate, more debate, because I want to talk to people who do not think like me. That's
I like the motto.
Yeah, less hate, more debate. If you assume that you are the way, the truth, and the light, and that all else is heresy, I probably shouldn't use Catholic language.
I was just wondering there, man. You're
exactly, but that's their attitude. It's puritanical. They are the Inquisition. It's like this is the only thing you're allowed to think on these issues, and if you deviate, then you are cancelled, purged. Doxed, which is obviously just online bullying, and that's not healthy. That's not how societies work. It's not. Yeah.
No, I much prefer the older style of discussion, and people were more open to that. I think it's a fucking meme, and I don't like memes at all, but it was like, can't it be the 90s again, where people just insulted each other and you went fuck off and moved on, It has become very polarized, and the idea of trying to reach out to the people of the other side is exactly the reason why you're here. We have disagreed and back and forth and all the rest of it, and what was it, you and Stephen? 50% if you're lucky, 70% disagree, probably.
No, he said 90. He said we disagree. We disagree on like 90% of the issue.
Yeah, but the conversations there, really do appreciate coming on tonight. It's getting 40 minutes going, so if anyone wants to jump in with some questions, throw them in the chat. We will be having an after party, and we've got Stephen sitting waiting, Dave already sitting waiting. We might get Fabio. He was there earlier. And
we've got a question here that is it critical cripple member says,
yes.
There's basically conservatism is only allowed to change if capitalism says so, at which point everything is up for grabs. I disagree. Conservatism isn't necessarily an economic philosophy. It's about conserving literally everything. Like there's no
you say keeping it, but what was kept was capitalism.
Yeah, no, okay. In economic terms, yes, but
in economic terms, and what we have both just agreed that actually drives society, basically.
Drives the market, certainly drives commerce, things like that. But there are
people's decisions and whether they're capable and stuff. And the entire conversation that we just had for like 20 minutes. Okay, sorry, go on ahead. We've got an after party. We'll hash it out in the after party. I'm sure Dave will get his own. You just can have a back and forth in the after party rather than text. But yeah.
But no, like for example, capitalism says that the NHS should be entirely privatised, but there are moves within the Conservative Party to keep it because it's a social institution. Capitalism says that the emergency services should be privatised, but conservatism says no, that we need to preserve our our emergency services as a social good, common social good. There are forces within capitalism that say that the military should be entirely privatised, as the Americans have done it, but our military, while of course it does play with the private sector, of course it does, it needs to serve the country, and the country is beyond a particular economic model. So I don't think it's true to say you can't conflate conservatism with capitalism. It's not a straight link. It doesn't work, at least as far as I'm concerned. Now, I'm sure that if he wants to come in and challenge me on that, that's absolutely fine. But
he's waiting, and Dave likes a good chat.
I'm sure he is. I'm sure.
I'm just checking my audio. If I'm too loud, folks, just let me know. Don't know what's happened. Must be picking up loads. But anyway, it wasn't meant as a conflation. Dave, just fucking wait. I know you're bitten at the... Do you know what? Right? Do you know what? Hold on. Right? Dave, do you want to come in? Do you want to come in and just ask him this question while we let other people in the chat come up with a few questions, and then what we'll do is we'll jump then to the after party. So this is what's coming up in the after party. Dave v. Kendon. This is what I bring people in. I find out all your opinions and wind up the chat to the point in the after party they all come in with pitchforks and we get the good fun stuff happening. So, right, let me see if I've got that should work, and we will move Kendon across to there, and we bring in Dave.
It's Dave. Hello, Dave.
Hello. I wasn't suggesting that conservatism was capitalist, or that it was any economic model whatsoever. I was suggesting that the only things that seem to move conservative movements is capitalism.
A lot of the changes that happen within the conservative movement are indeed motivated by capitalism. I would concede that point.
That was one point I was trying to make.
Fair enough. But I would argue that there are circumstances in which the Conservative Party changes. Like, for example, when the Conservative Party, or at least half of the party, going back to what we said in the previous topic, when we talked about gay marriage, for example, a lot of conservatives in the party, I mean, not all of them, half of the old Tories said it wasn't in the manner they very much strongly objected to it. But no one said, oh, we should support gay marriage because it would be a great boon for the wedding industry.
No, I completely agree.
That's not the argument. But the thing is that the way I use conservatism, the way that most of them, because I have a circle of conservatives, local conservatives that I hang around with, it's that we entertain reform, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So if you want us to play with an existing institution, whatever that institution happens to be, whether it's a brick and mortar building or it's a social program or whatever, if we can revise it, we could at least entertain that possibility, but we should err on the side of just conserving things as they are because they seem to be working reasonably well. That's all it is, as far as I can figure out. So that's what I do with it.
I think to a degree, but I equally think that it's a case of follow the money that I think is worse within conservatism than is in labor movements. I don't get me wrong. I come from a very conservative background. I've very much gone the other way. I was brought up conservative. I hung around with conservatives, and it wasn't until I fell into needing the safety nets.
Yeah,
it worked out just how badly it sucks.
Well, I suppose what do they always say? A conservative is a liberal that's been mugged. A liberal is a conservative who's been arrested. Isn't it? No, yeah, that's right. Yeah, liberal is a conservative that's been arrested.
Never been caught. Sorry, arrested.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, personal circumstances do shape politics, don't they? I mean, let's face it. It's like we could try and rationalize our philosophies, but ultimately, it's all about feeling. It's like this feels right to me, and we, and
I find your certain things are inconsistent, but some of them you've justified.
No, but I mean,
it's like the gay marriage. I think conservatism should have got gay marriage a long time ago.
Yes, I agree.
Right, because that's a matter of personality. They're on their own. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, this is it. It's nothing to do with you. It shouldn't be anything to do with the state. What happens between two people in a bedroom, as long as it's safe, sane, and consensual, who cares? Marriage is dying anyway, so we might as well expand the existing definition. The security and stability comes with marriage, at least in theory. So we should encourage it. I was saying,
by the way, I would. Oh no, I won't. Oh, well, I'm going to. Right, your thing with marriage, I think, is completely wrong.
Oh, go on then.
Mostly because your definition of what marriage meant, where the stability was, is arbitrary, picked at a point 80 years in the past. The stability came from the family, from the whole family unit, which was not just the man, the woman. This
that
ideal
was the point I made, Granny and Granda and having that support. Yeah.
Yes. This separation. It's a fantasy.
Well, okay. Well, the problem is that, as again, and I speak from personal experience on this, is that I understand that families are, if you've got a very close family unit, in fact, you find this with a lot of immigrant communities. I've had this conversation with people, a lot of communities from Central Asia. I used to work with a lot of Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, a couple of Indians, even one Kashmiri at one point, and they would have family, not barbecues necessarily, but they'd have family parties where everyone brings a meal, a dish, and you have a communal dinner, right? And they'd have like 50, 60 relatives around their house. And I go, I don't think I know 50 or 60 people well enough to even give them my address, let alone invite them round. So yeah, I understand completely that there is like a sort of a family network aspect to it. But you'll also find out that those people are also fiercely socially conservative. This is one of the things that I love.
Yeah, I completely agree. But my point is the marriage part of it there is not what you're protecting now. If that makes sense, is not what conservatives now. I'm definitely erring towards the Christian on this because that's the very, very two strict parents, and that's the family. Yeah. That's what the marriage that is being defended now is not the marriage I would say we need. Not that I think marriage is an institution that, as we have it, that's useless. I think the things you identified are valid and right. I think having the stability, having the multiple people, and I'd go wider and think it needs to be more people. How you would implement that from a social perspective, I don't know. But
well, this is it. But this is what I would argue is that I think that the institution of marriage was undermined by socially progressive policy that was either really bad, terrible, or ill-considered, and it's completely and utterly ruined. I mean, because as I said to MathPig, there's literally no point to being married now. There's no tax breaks. There's nothing. It's an excuse to wear fancy clothes and eat a bit of cake. That's literally it. Unless you're religious and you believe that you're making a sacred covenant in the sight of your creator, there's literally no point to getting married. There's no social benefit at all. So, I mean, I guess what I'm advocating for is I hate to say it, it's almost like a regressive policy, but I don't really want, because regression never works. The genie's out the
point is you're not, I think you're... ultimately it's progressive. You're still going forward with it.
Yeah,
but you're looking at back.
Society only moves forward, though, doesn't it? That's the thing.
I mean, it's. We should go to an party.
G.K. Chesterton said it best. The goal of progressives is to keep making mistakes. The role of conservatives is to prevent the mistakes from being corrected. And I think what's happening is that every time there's this bold new idea about how the world should work, there are a load of problems that are created by it. But instead of going back and tweaking the original problem, I think we try to come up with newfangled solutions for these people. And so basically it just spirals, it snowballs and becomes this mess. But I agree, you know, things weren't better in the 1950s for like literally anybody. I mean, you know, health, life expectancy, diversity of like opportunities and things like that. It wasn't better. But I just regret now. I regret a lot of the things I've seen because I keep thinking to myself, and maybe it is a fantasy. I will concede that point, you know. I keep thinking to myself, if we as a culture, not as a culture, if we still expected people to form stable, legally bound relationships before they reproduced, that, you know, children would be better off in wider society. Is that true? Maybe it isn't. Maybe you've got numbers that you can pull out and prove that it doesn't really make a difference. But to me, it does. From my own personal experience, I go, these kids come from a stable two-parent family structure. These kids come from a single-parent family structure. They're not all broken, but a lot of them are, and it's disproportionately represented. The broken kids are disproportionately represented in that group. Now, what you do with that is it's purely anecdotal, but that's where I'm coming from.
No. The point is, you're still dealing with and the problem is you're right in the one sense that trying to come up with a solution to it. You're still thinking within a framework that we had.
Yes, I suppose. Yeah, that's definitely true.
Rather than saying, I would say, sticking with trying to maintain that framework. Just in this, I don't want to piss anyone off because I don't agree with that framework. But assuming we were trying to stick with that framework, I come back down to the fact that we are forcing single-parent families to work. I think what is causing the problem with those kids...
My mum had to have fucking 3 jobs to support us. She busted her fucking ass, man. My brother was first home. He fucking... we all had to chip in. Even us as kids, because she worked her fucking ass off to make sure that we had everything that was necessary. Like, but I didn't mention it earlier because it's fucking anecdotal. But...
But my point is, I would say the underlying issue there is attention, rather than... And don't get me wrong, a traditional marriage might solve the attention problem. Equally, it might not. Especially, I've more anecdotal evidence in the States where you have 2 very hard-working parents that never see their kids.
Yeah,
because
I was going to say we've always had
childcare now is shocking.
Say again, sorry.
The price of childcare as well has been through the roof. You're literally working to pay for childcare.
Yeah,
you know, I'm being again anecdotal and broad brush, but it's for the price of the costs.
I mean, we've always had latchkey kids. We've always had, particularly in the working classes, we've always had latchkey kids where, you know, mum, you know, the parents keep eccentric hours, kids have to prepare their own dinners. We've always had that. But the argument then would become, again, if you do have children, you should really think about whether you can afford them first. And I speak anecdotally as well, because one of my relatives has 7 different children by 5 different fathers. She married 2 of the fathers. One marriage lasted about a month or 2 before they got divorced. She had her first child at 15. She's never worked. She's never paid tax. She actually has no qualifications.
Someone actually showed me a Facebook post of a person hugging his mother, going, the only woman in the 50-mile radius I haven't got pregnant. He has like 7 kids, 8 kids across 3 different women, and it's you know, he to a point he was proud of that. He was smiling in the picture, and the sort of joke, it may have been an old picture, but he's making a fucking joke, and that it annoyed me. Like,
very much. But the reason it annoys me is that because one man, I mean, you obviously got your daughter, and you know you're obsessed with her, and that's how it should be. But this guy isn't setting up families; he's setting up franchises, and he's just abandoning the kids with their mothers. And that's the thing about it. I'm not against divorce. because some marriages need to collapse. Some marriages need to go because it's healthy. The problem is that does the child feel abandoned? That, to me, that's the real question. And all of the kids that were from single parent backgrounds that were troubled had the sense that, and it's typically the father who leaves, as MathPig has acknowledged. My dad didn't love me enough to stick around. And that worms its way into the child's psyche. And we as teachers and learning support assistants and counselors had to sort of deal with the mess. And it's like, we need to sort of rein this in. We need to, I don't know how, but we need to rein this in, because that child is broken, growing up all warped and broken because daddy didn't do his job. And that's what winds me up. It actually winds me up because, to be honest, if we could fix that, we could fix a lot of our problems.
Just if I can say, how's my audio now? It's bouncing into the red. Can we I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. People type in the chat what it's good at. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There we go. Rab1, who's actually just turned up in the chat. Rab1's mother actually babysat me directly after school until my mother finished her one of her jobs before we could go home. So old long time friend Rab there. So fuck you, Rab. My volume is fine now. Type in the chat what number, or is it all good now? Also, Alika, you're more than welcome to join the after party. We will be moving there now. What you have been hearing for the last 5-10 minutes is just a teaser of the after party on the not topic specifically, but more what we're aiming for on discussion. As Dave has pointed out, he disagrees with Kendon and he thinks he's an asshole, and he said awful bad things about you, Kendon. Have you seen the private chat? So, but there's a conversation going on. He looks at the private chat. I'm joking. No, it's been a nice, cordial conversation, and if you are willing to continue that, you're welcome to join. I'm not fucking muted, Rab. Fuck off. And other than that, what I'll do is I'm going to kick Dave. Boop. We're going to go back to just me and Kendon. And we've lost Kendon. Kendon is there. What we're going to do is, Kendon, the floor is yours, man. I really just want to say beforehand, I give you the floor, is thank you very much for coming on. The conversation has been great. The banter back and forth, more so than just a fucking echo chamber, I always appreciate. I don't like when people tell me, I do like it when people tell me I'm right. I'm not going to fucking lie. But it's better to surround yourself with people who disagree with you, because then when you're right on something, you've confirmed it with 20 people who disagree with you, so you know you're definitely right. So, on that note, Kendon, thank you, and the floor is yours. What would you like to say?
We ought to encourage these sorts of conversations more frequently. Conservatives might be misguided, you might disagree with them, but they're not necessarily out to destroy the world around them. If you can find it in your heart to extend a hand over the aisle and to shake the hand of someone who is your political adversary, you will do much to heal any rifts in society, and then we might actually calm down and be able to build again, as opposed to divide and seek ways of undermining each other. There you go.
By the way, we had a theme going tonight. It was mentioned in the chat at the start. A friend of mine, Eddie, big guitar man, big metaler, all the rest of it. He's like, loving the t-shirts, guys. Absolutely loving the t-shirts. This one's 2003, so it's nearly 20 years old. It used to look like the same colour as Kendon's, but it's a little old. But yeah, thanks for coming. As I say, whatever your name is, Fabio, check Discord. I will post the link eventually when the after party goes live. We will have more people coming. 10-15 minutes, get a drink, take a pee, get a snack, get some crisps, whatever you need to do. Patreons, members, everybody. Dave, I think this is the first live stream I've done since you have upgraded your icon. Type in the chat, Dave. Ox has got one as well. They're now little leprechauns. They've been here 6 months. They're little leprechauns with little pots of gold, because I'm from fake Ireland. So members, Patreons, there is extra live streams, after parties to after parties, and I get bored and just want to hang out and talk some shit, and yeah, a little bit more behind the scenes. So it's a wee bit fuck it. If you want to, you want to. If you don't, you don't. It's nice. Don't get me wrong, it's nice. So on that note, everybody, think for yourselves, and we'll see you in the after party in about 5-10 minutes. All right, bye.
Bye.